Good morning and welcome to another edition of Dive In with Captain Sean. And today we're going to talk about something a little different. The normally I've talked about destinations and some luxury spotlights, but today we're going to talk to another captain. This is David Meyer. Um, David is, I've got his bio. I should have memorized his bio by right now, but he started running boats, running the rivers in the Midwest, Great Lakes in Florida. His first job was at 8 years old, and he knew he loved boats. At age 14, being self taught, he ran a 34 Alban trawler from Miami to Key West, just using charts and compass. And that should tell you how old we are. And then he talks about Loran Sea, which is another ancient mariners use that as well. And there's some other things that I didn't know about David. He spent 8 years in the Navy, and he has actually an MBA. He's been married for 29 years. He's got three very successful children, and currently, right now, he's running a boat called Assault Weapon. And a little bit on that one. It's an Ocean Alexander, a really cool boat. It's got manned diesel engines in it. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that. But what we're here today to talk about is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. It's what do I look for when I'm hiring a crew? And then how do you maximize that potential? Or what happens when you walk into a crew that could be doing better, or what are the stopgaps? And David came to me and he's like, "Hey, let's talk about this." And I said, "Sure." So welcome to the stage is David. Good morning, David. How are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
Good, thank you. So we've got a bunch of really interesting people here in the audience. We've got Ben Turner. Ben's a great guy. Ben's run some amazing boats. I'm hoping he has some questions. We've got Hannah, who goes to Mass Maritimes. Hannah, thank you very much for tuning in as well, and I'm hoping that you also have some great questions as well as a young up and comer. So, David, just jumping into this right away, it's who we were talking a little bit about mentors off camera, but coming up when you were young, who affected you the most as a mentor and kind of developed your management style?
I'd have to say my dad. He and that's kind of how we got into the maritime industry as well. But my father, because he employed several hundred people, and one of the things that I noticed is he was uh, slow to hire and very slow to fire as well. And I'd see him; it would keep him up at night because he said, these are people's livelihoods. I have a responsibility. If I hire them, I've got a responsibility to make sure that I can give everything to them that they need to be successful and thrive. And so my father was definitely a very key part of my understanding, the importance. And as I grew and my time in the military and managing people there and running boats and everything else, it became more and more clear to me what the need was. And so I blame it all on my dad. I blame it on him.
And then, well, that's got some, yeah. The I guess my mentors growing up in this business were my uncle Terry, my uncle David, both of which I wouldn't have a license because of my uncle Terry recently passed away of cancer, but
Mm-hmm.
he got his first captain's license at 19. We both worked for the same ferry line here, um, called Highline Cruises, and I got my captain's license at 18, beating him by a year. But anyway, and they actually made me a captain. And when I was working there, my uncle David also worked for that particular company, and he was amazing man as well. He actually died of cancer much too young as well. And And then so many other just great captains I've worked with over the years, and especially like again at Highline Cruises. I was running the high speed ferry yesterday, and I was talking to a young mate. He's 21 years old, and I was telling him about the captains that had gone through that company. We had a guy, Richie Bowen, who was on the Ballard expedition, discovered the Titanic. Hal Holdsworth, who was a salvage captain, who when the Challenger went down, he discovered the seventh astronaut, Martin Conroy, who was the youngest master. I think he was the youngest master unlimited at ever. He holds a PhD in piracy. I mean, just the wealth of knowledge and amazing mentors that I've been privileged to work with. Martin Conroy, Bud Conroy, gave me one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. And that was whatever you're doing on board the boat, imagine explaining it in court.
Yeah.
And that was, and that really set the tone. If I was making a navigational decision on, on something, I think to myself, does it meet this criteria? Could I explain it? So going forward in hiring crew is always been, I've like as you're probably on a lot of the captains chat groups, and somebody's always looking for crew or having to fire crew. I've talked to captains. They said that just the pool of applicants just isn't the same, and it's like I always want to say, "Oh, those darn kids today," and they probably said the same thing about us. Captains that I work with said the same thing about when we were coming up. It's like, and we were those darn kids. So how do you what do you look for? And again, we'd love to hear your comments. We'd love to hear your comments in the chat, especially if like for those that captains, or if you're just a manager, or if you're just curious, is like, what's the number one thing that you look for in a crew? And David, I'd like to hear from you, and then I'll comment on that.
I really look at, I don't even look at so much how much experience somebody has. I look at the attitude. Why are you here? If I hear somebody says, I'm looking, I want to travel and seems like a good way to make money, probably not a good fit. But I really look for attitude. Somebody says, I tried this. I went to college. I tried this. I hated it. I left my job on a Friday and I was at my SDCW on a Monday. And to date, I have 100% success rate with people that have done that because they came in it with the right attitude. The other ones are people that have experience. Yeah, because I have 4 words that if you want to get me on the bad side, there's 4 words I hate to hear. On my last boat. To which my answer is, why is it your last boat? Would you like to go back to that boat? Because every boat's different. And when I interview somebody who's got experience, I said, tell me about your opinion of how things go from boat to boat. And when I hear somebody say every boat's different, I'm here to learn the way you do things. That's encouraging because every boat is different. Every captain's different. Every program. And I'm for a while, I was a little hesitant hiring really experienced people because I wanted to train them the way that we wanted it done. But I really want to understand them as an individual. I like what Ben says. Look at their family upbringing, hobbies. That's so true. Oh my goodness, that's so true. I do ask one question. I do ask, am I going to see you coming in from the bar at 3 a.m.? And if they're going to do that, that's fine. But again, it does tell us what we should expect. And so understanding those things really is how I kind of put it together. And for the most part, I've been pretty successful at engaging people and hiring right. Not always, man. I have had a string of unsuccessful ones too. But I think the one we have right now who just joined us, I think I might have got a unicorn. So
The I've only had one boat where I had the whole crew were unicorns, and that was on Latitude. We'll talk a little bit about more that and how that crew came together a little bit. But I would say that I was a long time ago. I was asked for. I've been very fortunate. I've had some successful crews, and they said, "What's the number one thing that you look for?" And I said, "It's kindness." And I think that stems from like a lot of things, like Ben talked about what you talked about is like what was their family upbringing, what are their hobbies, what are their habits, and you can glean a lot from that discussion as if they're relatively if they're kind people. And by kind I mean if they're not willing to help each other and give back, then they're definitely not going to do that to the guests and give it their all. And one of the words that really, if you want to get on my bad side, if I hear that's not my job,
Oh God.
like your days are numbered with me. And it's like I am not above doing anything on board the boat. And I have a lot of different reasons for it. I was talking to a captain, and he's brand new at being a charter captain. He's qualified. He's a really good guy. And he said, "What's the one thing that you would do while you're on charter?" And I said, "Well, do the dishes in the galley." And he said, "Why is that?" I said, "Well," I said, "you can kind of keep an eye on things during dinner service. It's key. You can jump in where you need to jump in. It also shows that you're not above doing whatever it takes on board the boat," which is true. And and from the pressures that we're under as captains, sometimes it's nice just to do the dishes. That's your
I
only
agree.
responsibility, and do it well. The and Hannah comes up. He says, "This is like, can a person be shaped or made into a unicorn?" This is you're either. I think everybody has their inner unicorn. But anyway, this I should have a big rainbow graphic that goes up right now. The other thing that I ask in an interview, number one question is I asked them. I said, "If you can do anything or be anything, what would you be?" And like, if I get the answer, it's like, "Oh, I want to travel, or I want to be an Instagram influencer." I'll say, aim a little higher than that. Like, what did you want to do when you were like 5 years old? And they might say, "Oh, I wanted to be a marine biologist, or I wanted to be, a pilot, or whatever." And that's what, if you can tap into that spirit, then now we're on to something. I've had, like, again, going to Latitude, my chief stewardess Haley. I asked her that question. She goes, "I want to be a commercial pilot." And I said, "Wonderful." I said, "We'll help you do that." And we did. It's like we gave her time to take flying lessons, and having a pilot on board in the places that we went to was great. And it aligned her personal goals with her professional goals, and it helped us achieve our goals as well too. And that made her, so she was this like amazing chief stewardess pilot. That's a pretty unicorn. So if can a person be shaped or made into a unicorn? If they have that seed within them to do something great, then absolutely 100% you can do that.
Yeah, and I want to even take that to Jason. What Jason said: transferable skills from the shore in case someone is green. And that's a case. We actually had a deck stew, our first deck stew, male. Dude was green as could be, but he had a solid hospitality background, so he was a natural cruise director type fit. And then he said, "Okay, I want to learn how to run the tender, and I want to learn how to do this." Before it was done, he had been interior, exterior, tender, and it was really so. Yes, both are important. And again, it goes back to that attitude. My favorite thing is when somebody comes to me and during their off hour. It doesn't have to be during their off hours, but if things are slow and they say, "Hey, I'd like to learn how to do this," no problem. There's always at least two people on the boat that I run that can dock this boat if need be, because God knows, something can happen to any of us at any time. How does the boat get home? So I'm a big believer in cross training, and somebody who wants to be trained, like one of our current deck stew now, She's strong on deck. She's a rock star stew. And she's like, I really want to be an engineer. Our engineer's like, yep, gotcha. So this is the kind of thing that we look for. And Hannah, if you want to be you can absolutely be made into a unicorn. Absolutely.
Hannah's already a unicorn. So anyway, she's a good girl.
I think I might have met Hannah last year in Newport.
Yeah, I probably, anyway, yeah, you know, I had a captain one time that he was complaining about his crew, and I'll never forget this. He was doing it in front of his crew. I was on board a boat. This was at the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show. He's complaining about his crew. They're literally were right there, and I said, "Do you know what the problem with your crew is?" And he goes, "What?" And I said, "Why don't you take a look in the mirror?" And he didn't like that answer, but it's true. It's like that's a reflection. Now, sometimes, walking into a situation, you can get some bad apples, but you've also got the power to change that crop out, or even get rid of one, or just look at, or have a frank discussion. It's just like, what do you need? The other thing that I like to do is I go to people and I'll say, what do you need to do your job better? Or what do you need? And that doesn't necessarily mean like a new chamois. Sometimes it might just need that they need more time, or whatever it is. And then you give it to them. And then if they start complaining to you, it's like, and I said, hey, well, this is what you told me you needed to do to maximize your job. And now you're saying you need more, or that wasn't it. What's the real issue? And if you keep drilling down, eventually you find it. And sometimes you might find that they're just not a great fit for that particular job. I had, and again, like you said, you try to nail that in the interview. I had a woman came to me. She was applying for a stewardess job. I talked to her for about 10 minutes, and I said, "You want to be a deckhand?" And she goes, "Well, yeah, that's actually what I want to do, but I was told that I need to be a stewardess." And I said, "That's ridiculous." I go, "You're just going to be a bad stewardess."
Right.
I go, "If you want to be a deckhand, go be a deckhand." And years later, I saw her at the Palm Beach Boat Show, and she came up to me and said, "Thank you. That was great advice. I just got my first captain's license." And that was the route she wanted to, that was the route she wanted to go on, because she just wasn't a great fit for that particular route. Now,
one of the things you mentioned, the captain who you told him to look in the mirror. I am a big, so there's two things with me. I always believe that I should be willing to learn. If I don't view every trip away from the dock as an opportunity to learn something, I should probably stop running the boat. But the other one is taking accountability for your decisions. And there's an amazing book. If you haven't read it, if you're an audiobook guy, but check out a book called Extreme Ownership.
Oh, I have it.
Okay. Yeah. And you know what I like about that is because I know, first of all, I know several of the people that are mentioned in the book and the situations. The very first one that's mentioned, I know that one quite well. But the idea is we seem to be so prevalent in pointing, this way. And as I make sure that owners understand and guests understand, I am responsible for everything that happens on this boat, from a guest to a crew member to whatever. It ultimately lands on me. And one of the things they say in that book is there are no bad teams, just bad leaders. And trust me, every time I look to, if I have to make a change in crew, there's a lot of self-reflection there. What did I fail in any way? And sometimes the answer, I hate to say it, but sometimes the answer has been yes. And so before I made that change, I did a lot of hard reflection of where could I do better. Other times, no, it's just the wrong person in the wrong job, or the right person in the wrong job. But I think a lot of healthy self-reflection on the part of the captain is vital.
Yeah, like one of the lessons, like Shelton Dupree's, who I had on Latitude, is my first officer. A fantastic first officer. I mean, he exceeded my expectations in every way, and he's gone off, and now he makes films for the BBC. It's just exceptional guy. And when I first had Shelton, he liked a crew member, and I personally really liked him as well. I just knew he was not going to be the right fit. And I said to Shelton said, I really want to hire him. And I said, okay, he's your responsibility, knowing that we were pretty much going to have to let him go after this particular trip. And so sure enough, we were in Seattle and he called me and he says, he goes, we really have to let this particular crew member go. And I said, oh no, Shelton, you're going to have to let this particular crew member go. And he agonized over that decision. It was the right decision for the boat. We made sure that we made sure he landed well, because he wasn't a bad guy. It just wasn't working out. And I like the fact that Shelton wasn't flippant about. He took the responsibility of hiring him and letting him go very, very seriously, and as do I as well. I mean, I have a saying is I'm not very good at cracking the whip, but I'm excellent at swinging an axe, and I am, and it's not that I enjoy swinging that axe. It's that if you're gonna let somebody go, a clean, fast cut is much better than trying to berate someone and then creating a situation where you both hate each other when you leave. It's like, yeah. And I like to say, it's like most of the crew members on my cruise that have moved on or we've had to let go have if they were let go for the right reasons, like, landed well. They really did. Because and I still called them and said, how you doing and stuff. And like, sometimes that's like, especially when it comes to like substance abuse problems,
Mm-hmm.
is the other thing is like, and that's a whole nother discussion. But I've had crew that were fired for those reasons that I still keep in touch with today, because it wasn't that I thought they weren't disposable people to me. They had legitimate issues, and they've gone on to deal with those issues. And if there's any way that I can do to help them deal with those issues, then wonderful. It's, in other words, if we're going to help you reach your bottom quicker, good. So,
Well, that's something I think gets lost in this industry, is we become like, Alexander asked a question. I hope I pronounced that properly. How does an onshore support team support the yacht crew? That's one of those things that, the shore support, we can only do so much as captains at sea. I mean, yeah, technology is great, but we're getting ready to have our first experience with a management company. And that is a whole nother episode in itself. But being able to, if I got a guy that needs help, I want to bring the human side back into this, because I feel like we've gone too corporate in some respects on a lot of boats. And so when I interviewed this management company who I said I'd be working with, I wanted to understand how they were going to help me deal with the human side of this, because I don't want it to just be about numbers and compliance. That's all good at the end of the day, but these are still people that we're dealing with. And I had a really that we had to let go, because and the rest of the crew, because of a serious alcohol problem, and he did deal with it. So I hope that when we run across the situation, if we run across that, my shore support isn't focused on numbers; they're focused on the people aspect. Because I think too oftentimes we get people lost in the corporate nature that this has become in many cases.
Yeah, and there's a culture of cover your ass. This is a pet peeve I have as well too. Is someone trying to backdoor. I think this is in reference to like a crew support, like onshore crew support is like not respecting the chain of command. In other words, you get crew going directly to the management company and bypassing the captain.
No. I actually, funny, while we were in Nassau, we actually had a crew member from another boat brag to us that she went to the owner and got the captain and the mate fired. And I'm thinking, man, that's just a recipe for disaster, because what happens if it was just it was personality? Because I happen to know the captain of that boat, and he was a professional. I mean, Italian guy, very professional, and he wouldn't let people get away with things that they may have been able to afterwards. Yeah, I'm not a fan.
My philosophy. This has happened rarely, but if you want to come at me, then bring it. But be prepared. I'm very fortunate, and I've worked with wonderful owners that the transport the communication has been transparent all the way through, and I'm still friends with not pretty much with every boat that I've ever run with the owners. So if you've got like a poison pill, and again, but you know what? But it's back on the captain's shoulders again. I mean, Ben runs crews where, like, I mean, it's impossible to know really. I mean, Ben knows as many people as he can, but sometimes Ben's dealing with like hundreds of crew members, and you get one that tries to backdoor you. He might not even know. Like, the guy's been on for 2 weeks. He doesn't know him, or what have you. On the boats that primarily that you and I have had more experience, it's a much more of an intimate affair. Is that you can get to know the people on board the boats better.
I'm curious, Sean. How do you handle relationships with your crew in terms of, are you some captains, they move up. A friend of mine's getting ready. He's jumping to a 230 foot something or other. And he's like, man, he goes, I'm not worried about running the boat. He goes, I'm feeling like I need to start distancing myself from my crew, because I don't want them to feel like I'm too familiar. And if I have to make decisions, blah, blah, blah. How do you handle that?
I've been super fortunate. I've worked with, it goes back to the kindness thing. It's like there's a little bit of a layer that's built in. I'm not going out partying with my crew, but a little bit. Yeah, there's got to be some. You are there to make hard decisions. I had a decision one time where I had to fire my engineer and my second engineer. They both started a fist fight on the back of the boat in Via Reggio. Alcohol was involved, and like, I got a knock. Like, I heard a knock, not on my door, but on the bosun's door, and it was a "don't wake the captain" type of knock. And immediately I got up and went back, and we had to break the fight up. And I said to him afterwards, because they did it in front of 100 people. Had it happened had it happened in a parking lot somewhere, we could have just been okay, work it out internally, or I don't need to know. But it was, you put me in a position like that, I gotta make the hard choice. It was like everybody that was involved got fired, and and they respected me for that. And if you waffle on a decision like that, then you're done on board the boat. You really are.
So that brings up another question I had, and I'm going to ask a little bit about Latitude, your time there. It's easy when I've had to let people go. There's generally a dock within 6 hours of where I need to be. When you guys did the trip up to the Arctic, you can't just say, "Here, you wait on this iceberg and hop on the next penguin raft going back." I can't imagine how hard it was to pick the crew that you knew that you could count on from dock to dock.
Yeah, the stars aligned on that one. And then, by the way, I fired a guy in the middle of the South Pacific on an island, and I brought him. It's like, and I'm still friends with him to this day. He crossed a line, and there was just no coming back. And I put him in the tender at 11 o'clock at night and dropped them off on the beach in the South Pacific. And I came back to the crew, and they were like looking at me like nervous, like, "What'd you do with Lenny?" I had a taxi meet him on the beach and then bring him to a hotel. But if you got to get someone off on board a boat in the middle of nowhere, hopefully, and Northwest Passage would have been problematic. Sometimes there's always a way to get them off the, like, if the offense was egregious enough, then yeah, we're getting them off the boat. I can only think like something that would be that bad during a trip that bad would involve law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you can always find a cop or just leave them somewhere. And then if you're gonna really kind of cross those lines again, like latitude is like a lot of the stuff I did in the remote areas of the South Pacific. It's you can yeah, Ben's dealing with different stuff here. His helicopter works really good. Yeah, good, excellent point. Yeah, David and I weren't thinking big enough, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, you needed to get someone off. There's always a helicopter. There's always someone, but there would have to be many lines to be crossed. Like for instance, when we had the crew member that wasn't working out, actually that was the Northwest Passage, the first one. I'll tell you, he was like technically on point. He just wasn't jiving with the rest of it. Did I depend on him for a lot of stuff? Oh yeah. I mean, he was good at his job. There wasn't a doubt, but he wasn't good for the crew. So when I got, and I got to admit, the other crew members appreciated that as well. And there was a lot of time. I mean, it was 126 days straight through some of the most harsh territories on the planet with very little contact with anyone else other than the people that are on board the cruise. So, yeah, so basically the personalities were going to be pushed, but everybody was such a pro at their job, even though that he didn't really get along with some of the crew or caused some headaches. They appreciated how good he was at what he did. And like, yeah, no, I put him in some situations where if I needed to tender from A to, anyway, he was good. He was good in.
Yeah, I saw Jason's got a good question.
He was a unique tool.
Yeah, I saw Jason's got a good question, and this is something I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it a lot. Every time I post a job, I can sometimes weight the candidate by the weight of the resume, how many pages they have on it. How many see, or what do you see? Your changing yachts, mid-season. The longevity to me is important. I want to see at least complete a season. I was getting ready to hire a Stu, and I looked at her references, and I didn't know any of her references. But what I did know was 7 out of the other 10 boats that she had listed, I knew all those guys. And I noticed that she had a tendency to leave boats mid-season. So I called those guys. I said, "Hey, do you remember this Stu?" "Oh, man, great Stu." Boom, 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 boom. Raging alcoholic, but great Stu. And ultimately, that's why we had to let her go. So, I mean, that's one stream. But I have, I do take everything into account. Why did I say you have a history of leaving mid-season? That's why. And one person, she goes, "I lost my mom here, and I lost my dad here, and I was a temp, I was this, I was that." If it's reasonably explainable, that's okay. It's just, but if I hear too much, well, it was a chemistry, then we're talking a habit, and for me, that's a little concerning.
Yeah, I would agree. It's like, some people just have some bad luck or get off to a rough start, or there's, the other thing is like sometimes the boats aren't great fits as well too. And I've had crew members that weren't great fits on other boats, but we were fantastic. We turned them around. And that segues into a great question Ben had again. What are your daily or weekly routines with the crew to empower them? And that is to me critical, is that like I again, one of the and this goes back. This is going to go back to it. This will go to a question that I'm going to ask next, which is who is the worst mentor that you've ever had? I was on the only time I ever ran as mate was on a boat in. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit, but essentially, is like I was in Europe in some of the best places on the planet, and I just saw it through a porthole, or I saw the dock. We were never encouraged to get out and explore and to look around and do and experience the cultures and stuff that we were that we were there to actually bring, introduce the guest to. And so on my boats, one of the things that no matter where we are, like whether it's like in, some little town in Greenland or whatever, if I go down to the crew mess and everyone's like lying around watching movies, I'll go, "What are you doing?" And they'll say, "Oh, we're just tired, we're relaxing," or whatever. I said, "No, no, no. Let's all go for a walk, or let's like who's up for working out or taking a bike ride, or like or I even say like, hey, why don't grab like the second engineer who never gets off the boat and say, hey, why don't you come with me and we'll go clear in, or something." It's just is get them off, just get them off the boat and get them doing something that doesn't necessarily involve the boat or working out or doing something. It's like I will encourage them to, if there's a cultural event, the take advantage of that, take a class. I mean, Haley was working on her pilot's license. It was something that didn't involve the being on board the boat, that also just didn't involve drinking or lying around. Like
Right.
how are they gonna, like something that would better themselves. Take a class or what, doesn't matter, but keep like do something every day to keep moving and keep your head moving. And because it's like that, the apathy sets in, it's corrosive. So if you get a person that's doing their job and they're just doing their job and they're just lying around on their off time, or just perusing social media, that will translate into their work. It just will. It's a corrosive effect. So if you can encourage their daily or weekly routines, and Ben and I have talked about this too. He's like the same thing. He's like, let's go for a workout or a run, or he's into like self-defense, or like let's do something cool. It's like they come back energized.
Yeah.
It just does. Bodies in motion stay in motion. It just works. It
I
just
give
works
you
out that way.
give you a funny one. When I was back in the Navy, I spent a lot of time working with different special operations forces. And remember one day we were at the gun range, and the sniper that was in the group that I was with, he was doing his thing, but he was dressed really nice. I said, "Man, wait." I said, "You're dressed pretty nice to be at a gun range." He goes, "Well, I got to go to my other job." I said, "What do you do?" He goes, "Strap on." I said, "Why?" He goes, "I teach fine art at a local college."
Perfect.
And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "No." It goes a PhD and everything. I said, "You're a sniper and you teach fine art." He goes, "Got to get your mind off of work, man." And
Especially that work.
but it was so funny. It's, we've had people. We've got some of the fact while we were in the crew house this week, just waiting for the boat to get finished up, the crew decided to whip out a big canvas and they started painting together. Our chef, she's learning how to play the piano. I mean, it's you're so right, and this can get monotonous, and you can go a little stir crazy. And so I think, yeah, what you said is very important. Otherwise, you end up at the Fastnet pub and coming back at 3 a.m.
I love being surprised by my crew. I'll never forget. I have bosun. He's now a captain. Dave Smithson, great guy, and again, one of those great crew members, and that's the ultimate compliment to us as captains. Is like, if you got someone that starts as a deckhand and then now is running their own program, you're doing something right. Or if they're, it doesn't matter if they're just gone off and been successful, not necessarily in our industry, but in any industry, or in life, or if they're just great parents. It's you're part of that. We work and live too close together. Um, Yeah, as I was saying, one things I like being surprised about is we had a piano on board New Vita, and it was I was in the pilot house, and all of a sudden I hear piano music, like classical piano music, like Mozart, and I'm thinking, who the heck's playing Mozart other than me? So I thought it was just on the stereo, and I walk in, and then there's Dave playing the piano, like Mozart's Piano Concerto number 27, and not just playing it, but playing it well. And Dave, Australian, whose hobby was boxing, and I said to him, I go, "You can play the piano?" He's like, "Oh yeah, my mother, taught me how to play, and I played for years." And he goes, I like just playing. He goes, I hope you don't mind. I said, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, I want you to play for the guests when they come on board, because and he's
Nice.
like, okay. And it opened up this whole new dialogue and this whole new facet of him that I never really realized. And I think that's, again, going back to, I did a class on creativity at UMass Boston. They asked me to go there and teach it. And and doing the job that we do is that if you're not creative, especially like on your programs will be lackluster. And then art doesn't necessarily have to be painting with a paintbrush. It can be incorporated into all facets of your life, as in evidence is your sniper who taught fine arts, and he understood that everything can be art. And if you have that philosophy, it translates into all facets of your life. Now, one question that is we won't end on this because we went on a bad note. But who is your worst mentor?
Uh, he doesn't even know it. He doesn't even know it because he started off actually when I decided to go full time in yachting. I had been running boats, freelance deliveries, my military time, etc. But when I was interested in going full time yachting, I'm like, um, am I too old to do this? He's like, no, of course not. Very encouraging. And over time, it's like this person go out of their way to be disparaging and be condescending, and it's like, I think that was both a good and a bad mentor. And the reason I say that is because it shows me that's not the kind of captain I want to be. I get paid to drive a boat and do a job I love, and I never want to discourage somebody else who is doing the same thing and is finding some success. I've been very blessed in this to have many great mentors, both those that knew about it and those that don't. You've been one in many ways, and some other guys that I see all the time have been in many ways. I hate to go back and date myself again. Do you remember Jacques Cousteau?
He was a bad mentor.
No, he was a great mentor, but he didn't even know it. Do you think in this industry, because we're so transient, many of my great mentors are people that I don't see that often, and the ones that I would say are my bad mentors are the ones I see all the time, and they perhaps become so jaded at their job, they're tired of doing it, that it's just they went from being great captains to people that really should just retire at this point. And I don't look at them as bad people. I have nothing against them. I just think that if you get up and hate your job, it's probably time to leave. There's no point in disparaging other people. Again, we're responsible for that. All we have out here is each other. And I will close my part on this in saying this. There was a captain here in South Florida that has been getting a bad rap for a couple of years. And everybody would say, oh, he's this, he's horrible, he's the... You know what? We had a situation in the Bahamas where there's no towboat, and we found our tender had crap in the fuel tank, and we lost both engines in a not very good spot. And I called all over place trying to find somebody to come out and get me. You know who came out and got me? The guy that everybody was saying was a piece of crap for the last 2 years. And we've since become wonderful friends. And then I look at the people that were saying that, you know what, those people need to retire, because this guy loves what he does. He's not perfect. He's admit he's made some mistakes. So I That's how I'm going to answer. I think that the bad mentors were people that probably should have retired years ago and just ended on a high note.
Yeah, the I think one of the like you said, the any bad manager, or I'm not saying bad person, but everything is fear based. And if you, I took a job as a first officer, and it was my first job really in kind like in the real yachting industry, and um I was on board on anyways. They left me on watch, and we were at the Australian docks. It was on a 143, and the power went out. So I went down to the engine room, turned on the generators, and then the generator died. And I was like, oh. So I turned on the other generator, that died. So I'm like, okay, it's fuel. So I pulled the rate cores. They were filthy. Put them back in, fired them back up. All was well. So anyway, the next morning comes. He comes in and he says, "Oh, how was your night?" And I said, "Oh, the power went out in the dock. I fired up a generator, fired up the other one, changed the rate cores." And he started yelling at me, and he's like, "Anything that happens on board this boat that you can't handle, and it's like you need to call me right away." And at that point, I was like, "Wait a minute." It's like, isn't that why I'm on board? So you don't have to. It wasn't anything I couldn't handle. And anyway, at that moment, I knew I should quit. I said to myself, this is not going to work out. But yet I hung in because I'm stubborn. It just deteriorated from there. And at the point where I couldn't do anything right on board that boat. And I eventually got fired. He fired me. Because one of the reasons they fired me was, or he fired me. Because if they couldn't fire me for cause, they had to pay out my contract. So I think he was making it just so miserable, hoping I would quit. But I was like, I'm a glutton for punishment. Anyway, long story short, it messed with my head, as I couldn't do anything right on this particular boat. And I went back and I ran the ferry between Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And for the first time, I was actually scared driving a boat. I was nervous because I was second guessing every decision that I made, because I didn't know whether it was wrong. This person was supposed to be, like, he was the captain, like, that I was working for. He was supposed to know more than I did. Um, and I was bad to the crew because I just wasn't good. And then one day, I'm bringing the boat into Straight Wharf on Nantucket, and it was a boat called the Crossrip, which is about 115 feet, twin screw, no bow thruster, 400 passenger ferry. Anyway, the wind was howling, and I'm coming in at a bad angle when all of a sudden the engine on the starboard side explodes. It turned out later that the starter actually locked up, just like slid back and locked up, and the engine went. That's what blew up. Well, I'm in the bad spot in this slip with rocks on one side, yachts on the other, trying to get the ferry in, and the wind's howling. And then all of a sudden, like, this voice inside my head just said, "Step aside." And all the fear, everything left. And I was, and mentally, I was back. And all the big single screw boat experience I had just poured back into me. And I was decisive, and I put the boat on the dock without any incident. And after that, I thought to myself, this was all in my head. It was all the fear, everything was all in my head. And because of that incident, I decided to, like, really study it. I took classes in management. I upgraded my captain's license. I did the other thing he told me, says I didn't have a future in this industry. But I turned that situation into a positive situation, and it was a pivotal point in me that, A, I would never do that to another crew member, and B, when I was filled with self-doubt and fear, it's to always look at the root of that and think, okay, this is all in your head. How do you get rid of that? Well, one is that you fall back onto a level of competency that you have. If you start doing something that lost Dave. If you start doing something that you're good at, you'll you're you'll become more confident. And then that if you then have areas where you need help, you can then go in and find it elsewhere. And that's why I took classes in management. I upgraded my license and I improved myself. Dave has disappeared. We're in the land of I don't know where he went. So he's back. He's coming back.
We had a transformer, I think, blew here at Bradford. Everybody lost power, so we are now on cell phone.
We're back though. That's good though. That was fast. That was some fast thinking. You missed my big finish on that.
Oh,
Anyway, but we're almost done. Alistair has something good to say. It says each of us is responsible for how we show up daily. Mistakes are opportunities to learn. Does anyone else have any final questions or comments or anything before we wrap this up?
only question I would have, and you can choose to answer it or not. Guests are more important than mine, but I just wanted to find out how the planning was for your next big adventure that we talked about a couple years ago.
Well, that's still underway. What David's talking about is a voyage to go from the North Pole to the South Pole, along the way highlighting environmental hotspots, and not just in a gloom and doom way, but to bring people together that we can decide upon how do we, like, first of all, let's focus on these hotspots. Let's look at why they are happening, and then come up with real solutions. I'm very fortunate to be involved with some wonderful organizations, and this is where I'll take a time to shout out to them: the New York Explorers Club, the Monaco Yacht Club, which I'm a member of their captain's club and a member of the New York Explorers Club, the St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco, again, fantastic organization, Ocean Voyage Institute, which I've done plastic cleanups in the ocean. And what they all have in common is that they really look for solutions, not just let's bemoan how in danger we are. We got a question from Hannah here. This is, what are some professional goals you'd like to see crew members have? David, let you go take that one first.
If you are on deck, I would love to see every person. I want to see them strive for at least their base captain's license. If you're in that's in yachting, if you are kind of leaning more commercial and you don't have it, man, go get that AB. If you're on the interior, take the courses you need to be, whether it's silver service or you want to become a chef. Always be moving. If you're a captain, man, I'm 53 years old. I still have a goal to get my unlimited, and because when you get to be a certain age, you got to keep your brain busy. But for me, learning never stops, and it doesn't matter what position you're in. If I see somebody not pushing forward, I kind of say, "Hey, you're missing an opportunity here." So that's me.
I agree. It's like if you're a deckhand or a crew or anybody, get as many certificates as you can. I have a Master's Unlimited in Sail and Power, U.S. Coast Guard license. I started off with 100-ton inland and worked my way up the ladder. Along that ladder, I took courses that were, if there was a bigger course to take, I always took it. And it paid off. They changed some of the rules where, like, they allowed some of the tonnage that I had on larger ships to get the license that I had. So it is always better to be prepared for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared, because David's 100% right. It's not about, I've seen this so many times. It's not about like who is in line. So if you're on a boat and there's a guy who's been there for 4 years and theoretically he's a shoe-in for the mate job, not necessarily, because someone could come on board that boat that's got the right certificates at the right time with the right attitude that'll steamroll that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to ask yourself, what the heck has that guy been doing for the past 4 years anyway? That was, back to my crew on board Latitude. It was the stars aligned. They were the right crew at the right time with the right skills, but they also had a thirst of learning new skills. And that's what made us successful in the Arctic for 3 years.
Yeah, that's I just again, if I stop being willing to learn, I should probably stop standing behind this wheel, because then I'm stagnant, and stagnant can be dangerous.
I learn every time I get behind the wheel. I still gotta, like, I mean, it's fun and I enjoy it. But the day that I think I know everything is the day that I'm gonna make a mistake, and it's gonna be a bad one.
Agreed.
Crew probation. How long do you feel is the right amount of days for a crew to prove, be fit, and secure in a place on board? Um, I don't know. I throw them in. I don't have probation periods. Makes them feel like, I think if you're going to hire someone, hire them. If they don't work out, they don't work out. I think we're all on probation in some respect.
Yeah, I tend
Unless
to
it's a chef.
yeah, for,
vet chefs, because yeah.
yeah. So if somebody's green, I typically do 90 days. But what I tell them is, if it's very clear to me that you are where you need to be, I don't be surprised in 30 days if you're considered off probation. I mean, for me, especially with the green folks, man, it really helps to have something understanding. Hey, I'm not quite permanent yet. Maybe I should make sure my behavior is good, my standards are good, because man, down here in Lauderdale, you got a lot of green people that they party all night and then they show up for work. And so, for me, 90 days, but I am known for pulling people off of probation early if they show that they're here to be, because they want
Yeah,
to be
Ben
here.
just
They're
said
going to.
the same thing. I agree with that. Is like and then kind of a little bit of a question is like, how do you promote sustainability practices on board? I find that, again, it goes back into hiring. If you've got people that are passionate about, they're not just doing a job on board a boat, but in the environment that they're doing it in, those sustainability practices take care of themselves. Again, I've got 99% of the time, I've never had to say a word on board. It was like the stewardesses will just start recycling. The guys on deck will just start thinking of ways that they can be responsible. If you, again, if they've got, it all goes down to attitude and and an appreciation for the environment and the privilege of being able to work in the environments that we work in. I've never had this. I take this back. The only one time I ever saw a guy that was being disrespectful, but he wasn't part of my crew. He was on board, and actually, ironically, he was a native. We were in Vanuatu, and I was doing a project for the Bank of Vanuatu. We're building banks on really remote islands, and by a bank, I meant like a satellite dish in a box that they could put money in, and so they could get little savings accounts. And he was a local, and we were cruising between islands, and he just throws his soda can in the water. And I looked at him, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he kind of looked at me like shocked. And that was one of the first instances that I was like, I looked at, why are these South Pacific islands filled with plastic and nasty? And one of my theories is, sorry, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but they were so used to using sustainable packaging for thousands of years, like everything you see wrapped in banana leaves and everything, that they could throw a banana leaf on the ground and it didn't matter. And so they like the locals, at least, weren't educated that this is a forever item, that can that he threw overboard isn't just going to naturally degrade. The And I've seen that. I did a plastic cleanup in Central and South America where the locals were the worst perpetrators of of kind of destroying their environment. So, but again, it goes to education and to an appreciation of what we do. Dave, any final words or final thoughts?
No, I just want to say thank you to you, to the people that joined us. Again, Sean, you were a mentor before we even met, and I want to tell you that when when I need a reason to laugh, I always pull up the below deck where you're setting up a beach club and Eddie's having a conniption because you're actually doing something. And when I need 30 minutes of relaxation, I watch that amazing video you guys did, the highest latitude. Uh, Thank you. Keep it up. You're motivation to a lot of us, because a lot of people don't realize, man, just beyond the edge of the charts, there aren't necessarily monsters. There's some really amazing things, and so I'm going to be looking forward to your next adventure. And again, thank you for allowing me to do this with you.
Thank you, Ben. We'll definitely have to get you on here. You're Ben is another rock star in this industry. So we'll let you we'll let him tell you about himself at a later date. Anyway, thank you again. Thank you, Worth Avenue Yachts, for letting me take over their YouTube channel. David, thank you. Captains, thank you out there. And for young crew coming into the industry, keep knocking on doors. Keep believing. If I was going to end it on a song right now, I'd end it on Journey's "Don't Stop Believing." But I don't have the copyright for that one, so we're not going to do it. All right. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you out there.
Take care, guys.